Welcome back to The Struggle is Real at theeducatorsroom.com. I am Linda Darcy, and I have the good fortune to be serving you this evening. As I teased in the last episode, today's episode is talking about when to handle things in your classroom rather than getting the administration involved. That is a hot topic for a lot of teachers and certainly a lot of administrators as well, and has been a kind of a rallying cry for me, because I do believe that the more we can handle in our classrooms, the better off we are. That as soon as we send a child out, or we send them to the office, or we turn the matter over to the principal, excuse me, we are signaling that we can't handle you. And I think that's a dangerous thing to happen. I think that's one way you lose authority in your own classroom. Having said that, I do send kids out sometimes, depending on the infraction. But again, I talk about compassion a lot, and when I talk about compassion, I am largely talking about how my attitude has changed over the course of the last 2 years. But I also want to throw out there that a lot of what we should be, and what I will be in the future talking about in this webisode, this webcast, is compassion for ourselves. Just like parents and moms who want to be super moms and they kick themselves when they see themselves as coming up short. I think we do that as teachers. And yet it is an amazingly difficult job. And so when we consider ourselves coming up short, often we're not. It's just it feels that way to us because we have such high expectations for ourselves. And that is something that we're going to talk about in the future, at future webisodes. But for today, we're just kind of looking at this idea of when do you keep a kid in and deal with it on your own, and when do you send a kid out, or when do you send a office referral. Now, a lot of this depends on, in fact, I would say most of this depends on the culture in the building. I have been in buildings where they want you to handle everything in your classroom, and they get a little bit testy when you send a kid out of the classroom or send a referral. And a lot of that is born of, like I said, the idea that keep them in your classroom because you're the person that has to deal with them on a daily basis and does deal with them on a daily basis. It's also often because, if everybody sent every kid out, then the people who deal with discipline, whether it be a dean or an assistant principal or the principal in a building, they're going to be overwhelmed. So we need to pick our battles. And that's always kind of been my philosophy, is I'm going to pick my battles. I am not going to send many kids to the assistant principal or the dean, primarily because I want them to take it really seriously when I do. People that I work with know that if I send a kid out, that something huge happened, because I just don't do that. So it kind of buys me some cred with the administrators as a teacher. But having said that, I've also worked at a school where they want you to send the kids out, where it was a more urban kind of district, and they wanted to be able to intervene and have the most disruptive kids out of the classroom so that the kids who remain can have as distraction-free an environment as possible. I think a lot of this, as I'm saying it, I'm thinking, one of the keys to being a happy teacher is finding the school that has the culture that coincides with your philosophy, your teaching philosophy. For me, I would rather keep a kid in my classroom. Whenever I give a detention, as much as I would much rather, as we all know, here's a kid who's annoying the heck out of me during the day. Why would I want to spend an extra hour with them in the afternoon? However, I do believe, in so many words, the child has sinned against me, and they shall do their penance with me. It's also that opportunity, and I know I'm telling people what you've read everywhere. It's that opportunity to create more of a relationship with a child, so that they're easier to bring around in the classroom the next time. But again, going back to where do you draw the line? So for me, I would say I have two. Let's go with three. One is anything physical, obviously, whether it's throwing a desk at me, which I have had happen, or with another child, some kind of a fight or some kind of physical interaction. For me, that's one way to get it sent out of the classroom. Another one is the second time a child uses some kind of hate speak. The first time I see it as a teaching moment, and I'll pull them out in the classroom and I'll talk to them about what they said and why it's wrong. I mean, I teach middle school, and so a lot of times they just repeat things that they've heard said, and certainly younger kids do as well, without really knowing what it means. So again, I see it as a moment for education, that I can teach them something. And let them know why it's inappropriate, why it's hurtful, why it's hateful. And then if they do it again, then they're gone. Because at that point, I really believe it has to be elevated to an administrative level. And then the other one is the F-bomb. Dropping the F-bomb is never okay. I can excuse certain of the other curse words because, if I accidentally kick the table in my house, there's going to be something that comes out. And so as long as the child is contrite and, they realize and they look at you with that scared little look and then they're like, sorry, miss, I can forgive that. But when it's constant and or the F-bomb, then no, I don't have any tolerance for that. And those are my biggies. Those are my biggies when I send kids out. I mentioned last episode that I am a proponent of community building rather than punishment. And I have done many presentations and seminars where I talk about the dangers of punishment and that, punishment doesn't change behavior. It may stop it for a minute, but generally then that behavior will continue someplace else. But community building and building empathy is the way that we actually change behaviors. And I do believe that is part of my job. Part of my job is teaching the kids how to be self-aware, how to build in that time between react and respond. And a lot of that has to do with building up that relationship within the class, not just between me and the kids. And I think that's one place where we sometimes forget that it goes beyond. When we say building relationships, what is teaching? It's all about relationships. It's not just between me and the kids. It's not not a game of ping pong, but it's a game of volleyball. So I need to have a relationship with the kids. They need to feel that relationship with me, and they also need to have a relationship with each other. That's how you get that kind of feeling of community in a class. And I believe that happens through building empathy. So what does that mean? It means you point out the consequences of their actions on other people. I don't like the word respect. Here's another thing that I talk about sometimes in seminars is I don't like the word respect because it means different things in different places. I grew up in a strict Catholic military family. Respect in my house meant something very different than what respect means someplace else. And in some other contexts, in some neighborhoods, respect means not backing down. And so when we use the word respect with some kids, it is setting us up for some kind of fight, some kind of conflict between us, because we're using the same word to talk about two very different things. So that's why I use the word consider. Consider the consequences of your action, not in a punitive way, not in that you're going to get in trouble, although that is part of it, but think about what using hate speak does to other people. How does it make them feel? Think about when you're late to class, what's the impact? Well, sure, you might get in trouble, but more importantly, you may miss something. You may miss something important in class. What happens when you talk while I'm talking or talk instead of doing the work? Again, you're missing out on learning experiences. So not only are you not going to learn the material, but you're going to do poorly on a test or quiz. So, and again, that sounds really great, doesn't it? Coming from the administrator sitting in her office down at the central office. Yes. And so then coming back into the classroom, time for me to put up or shut up. And golly gee, it's not a magic wand. It's not as easy as it sounds. And yet it is the avenue I'm trying to use. And with success, but not as fast as I would like it. And it's all about balance. I don't know if there has to be. I'm not going to say there has to be. I know I am using some punitive methods as well as community building methods. And I feel somewhat hypocritical when I do it. But again, this is going to make me a better administrator. This is going to mean that when I go back, if I go back to being an administrator, I think I'm going to definitely have more compassion and not be so black and white with my comments about community building versus punishment, that it's a balance. And sometimes there's no time for the community building, right? I can't take time out for this one kid because I got the other 20 or 30 in the classroom that I have to deal with. And so punishment is kind of a shorthand. And it also often works on a temporary basis. But I still 100% believe that does not change behavior. And that's what I want to do. I want our kids to grow up, know right from wrong, choose right. My mantra in my classroom is just do the next right thing. Whatever it is, just do the next right thing. And then when a kid does something that was not the next right thing, that's my first question to them is, was that the right thing to do? And they know, and most of the time, well, it depends on how scared they are of getting into trouble. They'll admit it. So I guess I kind of strayed from the idea of when to bring in an administrator or when to send someone out, because I kind of see community building as the antithesis to sending a kid out. So if I'm a proponent of community building, for me, a lot has to happen in order for me to send that child out. And then obviously the middle ground there is the parents, is getting the support of the parents, which you can do without going to an administrator. And then if you are in a school where you get no support from the administration, it obviously makes so much more sense just to deal with it in the classroom, because whether they mean to or not, whether they realize it or not, sometimes administrators can really undermine your authority as a teacher. And rather than risk having that happen, that's another reason why I keep the kids in my classroom, why I try to deal with everything just with me rather than sending them to the administration. And that is unfortunate when that happens. If the administration is not supportive of the teachers, it's really hard to teach in that environment. And as a matter of fact, the research shows that the number one reason why teachers leave the profession and responsible for such a high rate of attrition, especially in urban districts, is a lack of support from the administration. So I think we can all do better. I think that it's striking that balance between the partnership and the teamwork necessary for a school to function, as well as how being the lead of the community in your classroom is imperative to having a good classroom environment. All right, so I hope I said something controversial in order to spark someone's interest, in order to write in or call in. Again, don't want this just to be me talking here in my kitchen. Well, kind of living room. It's an open floor plan. Kitchen's right over there. I'm going to try and change venue, but I finally got some good lighting here where my glasses aren't reflecting. So I may stay here for a while. Maybe I'll just change the background. I'll hang things up and see if you notice. So anywho, I would love for you to call into my new Google Voice account at, where is it? There it is, 860-245-8178. Leave a voicemail, give me some feedback, tell me about your struggles in the classroom with administrators. When do you send a kid out? Do you have a policy? Do you kind of fly by the seat of your pants? Does it depend on the kid? Does it depend on the infraction? And then also you can email me at ldarcy, that's LDARCY, at theeducatorsroom.com. Look forward to hearing from you, and I will see you next time.